We're honored that you're here. We're honored that we're here with Tracy and Sybrina, and we want to thank all of you for coming as well. Toward the end, we'll make time for your personal questions, and there are many questions that I have, but first I want to tell you all what I've already told you, but I admire both of you so much, your grace and your strength in the midst of so much pain. Many of us have only, including myself, have only seen you on television or in photos, but it has been a collective journey where we feel like we are grieving and growing with you. And so thank you for sharing Trayvon's life with us, and for allowing us to walk with you on this journey, and for writing such an amazing book. And I'm so excited that you all will be able to read it. I think, first and foremost, many of us immediately think of Trayvon and we think of pain. But I had an opportunity to have a very similar event like this with the mother of Amadou Diallo, and just an amazing woman. And it was for his 41st birthday just a few months ago. And she said something, and it leads me to my first question to you all. She told us that something that stings her, he was 20 when he was killed, and it's been 21 years, and he would now be 41 years old. And that number hurts her because he was shot at 41 times, and that number 41 was so synonymous with pain for her. And she told us that she was at a point in her life where she was trying to teach people that Amadou was more than that horrible moment. And because most of us who know Amadou's story, our introduction to him is her worst moment in life, his murder, but she lived 20 amazing years with him. And so my first question is, could each of you share some beautiful memories and stories of Trayvon that most of us never saw in the news, that didn't make it on Twitter or Facebook? When you reflect back on so many years with him, what are those moments that you think of?
Good evening, first of all. That's a pretty easy question.
Yeah.
There are so many moments that I can think of, but the one that comes to my head like right away, and if you read the book, it'll tell you that Trayvon called me Cupcake. And I always tell people he was a mama's boy, definitely. And one time I was at home, and I'm almost afraid to say this, but one time I was home and I would yell, Trayvon, Trey. And when he would come in the room where I was, I'd be like, can you get that remote for me? And he would be, it's right there. You know, when he never complained, he would just get the remote, and you know, he never complained. I don't care how many times I called him, he never complained. You know, he always wanted a hug or a kiss. He didn't care if he was at the park, in the grocery store, at school. He didn't care. You know, he was very affectionate. So that's one of the things that we bring out in the book, how affectionate he was as a teenager.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
I think one of the brightest moments for me as a father was February 5th, 1995. I was the first to hold him, and I actually cut the umbilical cord.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah.
You know, that was one of the brightest moments, and you know, we always go back and forth on this. And
do not get yourself in trouble.
I'll try not to.
I'm trying to help you here.
But there's so many moments that we shared together with him, man, and just watching him go from just being a seed that we planted into being this beautiful beautiful etiquette. It was just tremendous just watching him grow. The 17 years that we spent with him, we'll never forget him.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing those moments. You know, there's a photo of you and him that I've shared. I share it every year. I share it on Father's Day. It's just one of my favorite photos because I see the two of you, Tracy, hugged up. My son is here, and I'm very affectionate with my son, and you know, we're an affectionate family. What were you? Do you know the photo that I'm talking about?
Yeah,
what were you all doing in that photo?
Oh, we were actually at a house. We was at the house, probably barbecuing or something. And,
Yeah.
and I had a couple of friends that had DJ equipment, and he thought he was the DJ of everything. And so that photo actually shows our relationship, shows how close we were. It showed that we did a lot of things together, and one of the main points is it shows a father's love that, hey, no matter how old you get, how big you get, you're my son, I'll kiss you in front of your friends whether you like it or not. And our son
that
Javon
brings us
is here.
to another point.
And so time I see him, I kiss him, and he you know, but that's just showing brotherly love. And far too often we get caught up in this homophobic. You can't show love, but these are my kids, and I'll show them love until the day I die.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. You know, one of the things I say all the time is, you know, never make the people that you love, never make them guess how you feel about them. And Trayvon never made you all guess, you all never made him guess. And I know looking back, that gives you a sense of peace that he always knew how much you loved him. You know, Emmett Till has been in the news over these past few days, and soon after Tamir Rice was murdered in November of 2014, I wrote a column about Tamir Rice, and I said that I felt in a lot of ways he was like a modern day Emmett Till. And Emmett Till's family, who now 62 years later still fights for justice, 62 years later, generations later, still fights for his memory, they reached out to me. And they loved the comparison, but one of the first things they told me was, actually, we resonate deeply with Trayvon and his family. And I think now more than ever, as we learn that for 62 years there's been a lie told about Emmett Till, and many of us knew long ago that was a lie. But the lie had layers. The lie was that he whistled at a woman. Another lie was that he grabbed her. Another was that he said something foul to her. He's a 14-year-old boy, out of town in an unfamiliar place. His relatives had always said that were in this store that he never said that. Well, the woman, Carolyn Bryant, who testified under oath that those things were the case, has now said in a book that is about to be released that all of that was fabricated. And when I heard that, I thought of both of you, because you have had to deal with so many lies about you, about Trayvon, about the circumstances of his murder, and how do you process this kinship with Emmett Till when, for most of us in this room and for generations, the name Emmett Till immediately causes so much emotion that you all are now so closely associated with that? How do you feel that? How do you process this connection to the Till family?
I think for me, what it does is, we all know that Emmett Till sparked a movement with civil rights.
Right.
And so it's been years and years since it's been a spark needed. So on the death of Trayvon, that sparked another civil rights movement in its own way. And so that's one way that it ties in, but also it ties in. You have two African-American young men, basically children,
Boys,
that are in unfamiliar territory, being perceived as doing something that they didn't do. And the similarities between the young lady that accused Emmett Till of doing something that he didn't do and the killer of our son is both had stories that only they believed.
Sure.
And in our situation, we look at these were the only two individuals around at the time. Yeah. So whose voice are you going to hear? Are you going to hear this dead young kid on the ground, or are you going to hear the voice of a neighborhood watchman who's able to tell a story, who has friends on the police department, who has parents in the judicial system? Mm-hmm. And so it became a tale of my story against his, as same as Emmett Till. It was Emmett Till's story against the young lady.
You think about that, Sybrina, about Emmett's mother, who was just a beautiful, wonderful, fierce advocate for him until the day she died. So much so that we know his name, and that was before Twitter, before Facebook. We know his name because of her, and in so many ways, like, we know Trayvon's name because of you. Like, do you feel that relationship or kinship with her?
Absolutely. We have been connected through the families, right. And we attend their events, they attend our events. But one thing that I can certainly say that Mamie Till was just Class A, hard to follow mother of the movement, and that's because she had that open casket, because she wanted the world to see what was done to her son. And that left a lasting impact where I don't think a lot of mothers could see their child in that manner. But she not only saw her child in that manner, but she opened it up for the world to see. Take a look at what these people did to my son. Yeah. And it sent a clear message that it was happening back then, and it continues to happen now. Maybe in a different manner, but it continues to happen.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a few painful questions because I feel that it leads us in the end to the wonderful things you are fighting for now, to make our country a better place, to see substantive change happen in a country that is so resistant to it. Can you describe when you first knew something terrible had happened? As a parent, I know there's a moment of panic at first, where's my child? But can you describe for us the moment where it transitioned from an everyday panic of where is this boy to something much worse than that?
For me, it's when he didn't answer his phone. Trayvon was a child that anytime I called, he would answer his phone no matter what he was doing. And so for him not to answer his phone throughout the night, and for me to wake up having to call different police entities to find out if someone had been arrested by the name of Trayvon Martin, looking in hospitals, seeing if someone had been admitted to the hospital as Trayvon Martin, and not to get any answers from that, but then call the sheriff's department and say, I want to file a missing persons report. And when the sheriff's department told me, we'll call you back, that's when I knew something was terribly wrong. And that from the moment that the detective first came up and he mentioned his title as being a major crime scene investigator, it sunk in that, you know, it was one or two things that could have happened. Something happened to my child, or my child's done something.
Sure.
And so from that moment, 5 minutes after that conversation, that small conversation, was a crime scene photo with his body sprawled out, and I knew then and there that my life had changed, and the next thing that I had to do was inform his mother that something has gone wrong.
Sybrina, can you describe for us the moment you received that call and the emotional process of getting a call that Tracy had seen what he had seen? Can you describe that moment for us?
A lot of times I always say that was the worst day of my life. I say that was by far, as a mother, as a parent, that was the worst day of my life. But I think when Tracy first called me, I still drove my car. I was in a parking lot when he first told me, and I cranked up the car and put my seatbelt on just as clear, and I drove off. And one of the things that I told him was that wasn't him. And I asked him, did you see the body? And he said he saw it on the picture, and I was like, that's not him. And I said, you have to go and see the body, because I think I was in disbelief that I really just didn't believe it was Trayvon, because I know they have Photoshop. Maybe somebody was shot and killed and they had his ID on them. And I just was thinking all kind of things. And then I drove a short distance, and I was on the expressway because I was headed home. And I pulled over and I lost it. I lost it as a mother. And it kind of sunk in there. But the worst day of my life was the day of his homegoing service, which was the funeral. And I had to sit through a service of my 17-year-old son that had been shot and killed. And he was wearing all white in the front of my church. And it was just like a life-changing moment. I mean, I understood that in order for him to get to heaven that he had to die, but I never would have thought that he would die before I would. And so it interrupted the normal life process when you lose a child.
Yeah.
The pain of losing a child interrupts your life. I have lost family members before, but it's nothing like the pain of losing a child. And so I try to tell people how deep-rooted the pain is, and how you never get over the pain, and how you are so frustrated and disappointed by the justice system, and you want to blame somebody, and you just don't understand why 5 years later I still have a hole in my heart. And I continue to try to put the best foot forward. And I thank God for the 17 years that he did give us Trayvon. And what he has left, the seed that my son and Tracy's son has planted in us, is the power of Trayvon Martin.
Yeah. Well, Tracy, when did you realize that it was a really bad man who had murdered your son, that he was a really terrible human being? When did you come to the knowledge that you were dealing with a man of low character?
From the moment that they said they weren't going to arrest him, and they told us that, well, they told me that he had a squeaky clean record. We kind of knew that something was wrong.
Which was not true.
Which was not true, exactly. But once we found out the altercations that he had prior to this event, and then we started hearing in the courts that he had made all these 911 calls on young 5 and 6 year old young men
in your neighborhood.
In that neighborhood, right. Yeah. We knew that something was wrong with this individual. We knew that there was a problem. We knew that there was a cover-up that they were trying to put in front of us, and so we knew that we had to buckle up and do what we had to do to. They were tarnishing his name, so we said, we're not going to tarnish we're not going to tarnish the killer of our son's name. What we're going to do, we're going to uplift our son and show the world that this isn't a bad kid. He wasn't doing anything. He was walking home from the store. And so I think from maybe a month and a half into this process, we knew that we were dealing with excuse my language, but a sick individual.
Yeah. You know, even as I read through your book and as I reflect back on over the past 5 years, in my mind I feel like there are two villains. One is his killer, and the other is the justice system, which failed you all over and over and over again. And like, when did you, because to all of us, and this is what sparked the movement, like to this day, if you attend any protest, if you hear any activist, like we all call on Trayvon's name. I mean, you hear his name, like it impacted all of us so deeply because it was such a clear and obvious injustice. When did you fully realize that the justice system in Florida was not going to work for you in the most simple ways that it should have?
Well, one of the things I could say is I had never sat through a trial, and I've never listened to evidence of a trial, and I didn't know the whole process. But listening to the process and sitting through the trial, it was clear to me that Trayvon was being put on trial instead of the person that shot and killed him. You know, it was so many things being said about him, and he's not the person that murdered anyone. And so
even to the point that after his death, Trayvon was drug tested, and his killer was never drug tested.
Absolutely. That's one of the injustices we talk about in the book, that Trayvon, they did a background check on. The person who shot and killed him, they did not.
Right.
Trayvon, they did an alcohol and drug testing. For the killer who's standing over him with a smoking gun, they never did it. And so
to this day,
it's, right. So it's obvious that it was always leaning. It was always leaning. Justice was never going to be served. But at some particular point, I think we really were hopeful that the jury would see that this was a 17-year-old unarmed teenager that was just walking home, minding his own business, not paying attention, and then noticed that someone was following him and profiled him and shot and killed him. He had no clue what he was walking into.
Right. Well, I have two final questions, and then we'll open up to questions to everyone. I've spoken to so many parents who've lost their loved ones to racial violence or police brutality or even gun violence of any kind. And one of the things that they each tell me is it's impossible not to imagine what your loved one would be doing. Like for those of you who are not yet parents in the room, to raise someone for 17 years, I mean, you put your heart and soul into 17 years. What do you think Trayvon would be doing right now? What do you imagine? When you are out and about, do you see things and say, oh, he would love that? Or do you see a movie and be like, oh, he would love this? Like, how do you see him in your everyday world? How does he live, today with you?
For me, I just take a look at Javaris and know that the same path that we laid for Javaris was the same path that we laid for Trayvon.
Right.
Javaris is an IT major from Florida International University, so my vision would have had Trayvon finishing up his degree somewhere right now, hopefully being in the aviation field.
Yeah, that was what he loved so much. Right.
So I mean, I can actually see him being in the aviation field, doing some good things. I can see him doing things in the communities, which he loved to do, feeding the homeless or helping children on the park. I can see him doing that every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Sybrina, when, you know, in your everyday life, are there any things that you see and that you think, oh, he would love this?
All the time. I can tell when he was becoming a young man, he would take more showers. Notice that. And then he had to iron his clothes, you know, and then he had to put on cologne, and I didn't have to tell him to get a haircut and things like that.
He was always fresh.
Right, and he had a little fuzz on his so it was things that he did to make me know that he was growing up. And so, you know, I just think about those things, and I can smile really about those things. And that's the passion that we have and the love that we have for him. We know that he's looking down on us and he's smiling. And, you know, I don't cry as much as I used to. I used to cry a lot, you know, and I've never been ashamed to cry. I mean, if the tears come now, because I notice some of you ladies were trying to make me cry earlier.
Yeah.
And I just tried to think about balloons or cupcakes or something, because I cry pretty easy. And, you know, I just think about some of the good things and some of the good memories that people can't just take away. You can't take away that. It's not going to leave me. It kind of fills that hole that's in my heart, you know, just knowing that he's smiling and I'm not blowing out his candle anymore in heaven, because he's in heaven. And Dr. Phil told me, every time you cry, you are blowing out Trayvon's candle. And so I cried then, and I said, I don't want to blow out his candle. And so I kind of think about that, and I'm like, if I cry, then he's going to cry, so I better not cry. And so that's one of the things. And then people look at me and they think that I'm so strong, but I wasn't. Believe me, I wasn't. I told myself that I was strong because other people like you told me I was strong. And I would look in the mirror and I say, I'm strong, and I would just cry and cry and cry. And then I continued to say it to myself. So you have to reinforce what you say to yourself. And I became strong once I kept telling myself that I was. So that mind plays a trick on you.
Yeah.
You know, whatever you tell yourself you want to be, you will become. You got to read the book.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to my last question. It's a hopeful question, because for a lot of people, we are not in a hopeful time right now. We live in a time of deep national despair, frustration. When we think of Emmett Till sparking a movement, and we think of the 5 years after Emmett's murder, it's kind of exactly where we are right now. That 5 years after, you know, we're into the fifth year after Trayvon's murder, we are now in a full-fledged movement in this country. Not just the Black Lives Matter movement, but when we think about the Women's March, or over the past 48 hours, there have been protests at almost every major airport in this country. I have seen you do something that I think is very prescriptive for all of us. In the midst of the despair and the pain and the anger and the frustration, you have found a new battle to fight. You have found a new cause to champion that you may have never imagined yourself championing years ago. Can you tell us about the causes that you're fighting for, and how fighting for something that matters has helped you just live another day, live another month, live another year through the pain of it all?
I think that the work that we're doing, it just speaks of who we are, first and foremost. I think that a lot of the things that we do, a lot of things that we take for granted, me as a father And a part of the foundation, what we do is a program called the Circle of Fathers. And what that program does is we reach out to men in the communities. We try to educate them on co-parenting, which is something that has helped us get through our ordeal. We try to speak on mental health issues. We have mental health issues in the black communities that we really take for granted. Young women getting pregnant at 13 years old, that's a mental health issue. Our young boys going to school with pistols, talking about shooting up the school, those are mental health issues. And so the things that we've been doing with this fight has helped us. It kind of helps you get to a place in your life where you say that this is what the community expects of me. This is what I'm going to do. I need to be there for my community. I need to be there for the people, and we're going to keep doing it. We can't just sit back and say that our son is gone and we're going to pout about it. It's no time to pout about it. What it's time for us to do is continue to fight for his legacy, continue to fight for his name, continue to uplift him, and continue to uplift our communities.
Yeah, Sybrina, what are you fighting for right now that energizes you? Like when you are advocating for a particular cause, which cause gives you the most life and shows you what your future will be like?
One of the things that I continue to fight for is human rights. You know, a lot of people say civil rights, but you have to humanize people first, and you have to see them as human beings. And we got to get back to the old school. We got to get back to the basics where we are respecting one another. And I think we kind of lost that in the shuffle. There's so much disrespect with people's family members when they pass away. It's so much disrespect with people's religion. You can't force your religion on anyone. But I think, you know, whether you are rich or poor, whether you are tall or short, it does not matter. We just need to respect one another. And so I'm for human rights, and I continue to fight for human rights. I continue to fight for stricter gun laws. We don't have anything against the Second Amendment. We think people should have a right to bear arms, but at the same time, they need to be responsible gun owners. And so, you know, we continue to fight for our children. We continue to fight for our young people, because that's what I see as a part of the next generation. Who's going to be in the White House? Not now.
Sure.
Did I say that out loud?
I was going to say, I was going to say 4 years, but we don't even know if he's going to make it 4 years, so. Yeah.
I can't tell you who I campaigned for, but she did not win. But,
you worked hard. You worked really hard.
Yeah, I did. It hurt really bad, too. It hurt really bad. But I just want to say, you know, we got to continue to fight for one another. You know, I'm not Muslim. I'm Christian. But at the same time, I'm standing with Muslims, you know.
That's right. Yeah. Well, everybody, please put your hands together for the parents of Trayvon Martin. Yes. Thank you. Yes. Sure. They're going to take some questions.
I am the roving microphone.
There aren't many ground rules, but I do want to say one thing, and nobody asked me to say this, but there are boundaries. And one of the things that I would love for us to avoid is the question of, if you saw his killer, what would you say to him right now? And I think that question is something that we all wonder. But I have asked myself, if I saw him, like, how would I handle I was next to a man who looked like him on the plane. I swear I literally had to take, like, first I had to Google, I was like, if that's him, and I had to think, and many of us in the room have had that thought. What would I do if I saw, and sadly there's a long list of if I saw this person and that person and that person, but that's not the question that we're asking. So if think about the things though that you are curious about. They're fully willing to answer even the most difficult questions, but ask them about them. You understand where I'm going with that? Yeah. All right, and then I'm just going to be quiet.
Hi, my name is Violet, and I'm so happy to be here tonight. And I just wanted to say I remember when the reports came in that your son had been murdered. And obviously I cannot relate as a mother, but I recall thinking, as I did when Eric Garner was murdered, that Trayvon could have been my brother. And Eric Garner could have been my father. And it always gives me pause. And I was very happy at the time when President Obama said Trayvon could have been my son, much to a lot of backlash that followed. And I'm wondering, especially in this age of Trump, where I'm feeling very discouraged, and I can imagine other people are, we all blame Trump, but there were a lot of people who voted for Trump and sought to take this country back. And so I'm wondering what we can do to compel people to feel that Trayvon is all of our sons, and what we can do in terms of action to do that. Because the fact is, in this country still, and perhaps I'm naive, but I've known more than ever in recent years that a black life does not mean as much as a white life. So I'm just wondering, what you would suggest we do in addition to marching and that kind of action.
First of all, we need to say that a black life does mean as much. We have to say that, because if we don't give value to our own lives, who will?
Right.
Right. And so you have to be careful what you say, right? I would say, what can you do even if you didn't lose a child? Support families that have. Support laws that you think are wrong. Run for office. There are nonprofit organizations right here in New York that you can support, that you can work within those organizations. Nonprofit, grassroots organization, National Action Network, they have been a big supporter of ours. And so there are organizations that you can get involved with and you can do the work. Don't wait, because one of the things that I always say is, my son was shot down before I stood up. Don't be in that same position. Do your part now. I'm doing my part now only because of my son. Don't wait till something happens to your son, your brother, your sister, because even our young ladies are being shot and killed.
Right.
But do something now. Get involved now. Don't just look at social media and like a story or comment about a story and say, that's so sad. You're not doing enough. So if that's what you're doing, you're not doing enough. So make sure that you're working in your community to make a positive change.
Wow.
Hello, my name is Jasmine. I'm a news writer and editor. And the first time that, my first year out of college was actually my first time at a publication, and one of my first stories was about your son, and it touched me deeply, and I thank you for being here. My question is twofold.
You only get one question.
Okay. Well, you can decide to answer the second question. So the first one, I want to know about your process writing the book. How was that for you? Did you have to think of your most memorable moments, or did things come to you randomly? How was that for you both? And second, I want to know, what was your experience with Beyonce as well?
Writing the book was very difficult. Writing and reading the book is extremely difficult. We thought that it was going to be an easy process, but it wasn't, just to recall and just to relive some of the things that we had been through and that we thought were behind us. To talk about it in writing, to read about it, it was just, you know, it was so eerie to just read about your own life. You know, you've always read about other people's life, and it was just so difficult. It was very difficult. It was, some parts in the book are painful. And so if it causes pain, then that was the intention, so that we as parents can express to you how we felt. And that means it served its purpose. Okay, the next question was about B. Okay, so to this date, I've gone to 4 concerts. I dress a little differently when I'm not out, you know. The music was great. She brought in, I think it was 4 of us, so it was 4 moms that was in her video, and it was just an awesome experience.
I was living in New York, and there was an enormous rally here in New York, and Jay-Z and Beyonce came to the rally. And I think people have a public image, and so much of what they do, they work hard for people to not know about it. But I have seen them over and over and over again express how much they care about you all and about the family. And so it's been a beautiful thing, even just from afar, to see it. And so, but the dads, I don't know, man, some of the moms get a little more love, man, but yeah, I don't know.
I'm gonna answer the second part of that question first. I'm not a part of the beehive. But they definitely extended their hand to us, and we're thankful for that. But the first part of her question was, you know, how was it to write the book? And you have to understand that we're reliving a tragedy. We're reliving something that just, you know, that hurt us deeply. You're talking about the fabric being torn from your life. And so just to have to go back and we took notes. We were actually asked to take notes while we were going through the court process and everything, and we took notes, and it wasn't something we wanted to do. We didn't want to write a book because this is just reliving the worst days of your life, the worst times in your life. And so we never had a chance to actually get over the grieving process. And so it's like, the trial's over, what are you gonna do? Okay, let's keep our fight, let's go ahead and write the book. So here it is, 1,800 days later since his death, and we still haven't had a chance to sit back and grieve because we're so busy trying to help others with their grieving process. So, but we understand that this is what we're here to do, and so I think that this book, a lot of people will take that we've written this book as this is a part of their healing. No, it's not a part of our healing. This is still a part of our grief, and everybody grieve in their own different way. And for me to say what my grief is, I can't tell you, but I can tell you that there's a lot of pain during this book.
Okay, over here.
Can I not use the mic? I don't want to use the mic. Basically, this isn't really so much a question, but I have a message for Ms. Fulton and Mr. Martin. I told my students I would teach it. I teach 126 beautiful, beautiful black and brown young men who I love more than anything. And they just want to say thank you for all you've done for them. They look up to you. They look up to Linda as well. They couldn't afford
Thank you.
Before we leave, we want to take a picture with you so you can show the kids.
Next question.
Yeah, my name is Carl Dix, and I'm somebody who's been working on police violence and racial violence for decades. And I thought I had gotten used to it until Trayvon. And then it was like, and I thought I knew the justice system.
Right.
And then when it did that, and so that was one thing I wanted to say, but here's what I wanted to ask. Because I've been working on this for decades, and I know what a horror it's been. And then you have a scene where a dude gets in the White House who campaigned on unleashing the police more, and you know who they're going to go after, and who brought forward the kind of racial hatred that not only murdered Trayvon and many other people, but then justified that murder with the lies that came out. And I guess the thing that I want to pose, you know, because this dude in the White House, the president in the White House, because he ain't mine, and I got to make that real clear, I think he's illegitimate, and when I think something is illegitimate, I act on it. So I've been trying to figure out how we get him out of the White House. But for you all, you have been through this experience, and then you see this hatred being unleashed. You see a dude getting nominated to head the Justice Department who has fondness for the Old South. I wonder how that hits you all. Is that something that you see that you're dealing with? And I know Shaun's supposed to be quiet, but he could comment on that too if he wanted.
First and foremost, for us, is not who's in the White House, and I agree with you about that dude. It's a warehouse right now. Yeah, it is. And so it doesn't matter who's the president of the United States. We've taken a vow to go out and pursue justice or be the voice of the voiceless. So that doesn't stop. If anything, what it does is it elevates us to another level. It makes us want to go harder, so to speak. That's what it's all about. We can't save Trayvon. We can't stop what happened to Trayvon, but we can stop what happened to the next Trayvon, and that's our mission.
Yeah, I'll chime in, Carl. I saw Carl. I admire Carl Dix a lot. He is a leader of so many protests and movements here in the city and beyond. But I agree with Tracy that this room is packed for, I think, two different reasons. First and foremost, because of who you're here to see, but it's also because of the changing climate of the country. And I think they are an amazing example of how, because the climate is changing, I think more and more people are going to want to hear what you have to say. And like when I look at the two of them, Carl, my thought is always, if they can push through, if they can face what they have faced, and come here and write this book and share their story and fight for reform and push through the pain, then there's no excuse for any of us, not a single one of us in the room, to not push through whatever may be holding us back in our own way. And so I think, as ugly as what we are experiencing in this country is, my hope is that it awakens more of us. It awakens the fighting spirit in us, and I look forward to walking and working alongside you all in this fight for sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Henry. I am a social worker by profession. Thank you for coming and sharing your story with us and opening up to us. Through my work with my agency, Partnership with Children, I've worked extensively with young men of color who have constantly been labeled based on appearance. And one thing that was really big after the situation with your son was the whole hoodie movement, right? And that resonated with them so much. And Tracy, you mentioned that you could see Trayvon working in communities, talking to or working with kids. And if he was here today, what do you think what would his message be to kids? Either of you could answer, there's no problem, but what do you think his message would be to kids around that, around just being profiled and his experience with that, or what kind of advice would he give to, especially to the young men?
I think his advice, because he loved kids so much, would be, first and foremost, be respectful. One thing that Trayvon was, he was very respectful. He respected his parents, he respected his peers, he respected authority. And so that's one thing I knew that he would have preached to his younger constituents. I think that what his mission, because I've seen him at the park, I've seen him feeding the homeless, and he just had a passion for those that didn't have. And so by him having that passion, it kind of took him to the next level as far as knowing how humanity works, as far as knowing what it meant to respect a person. And so I could see him talking a lot about humanity. I could see him talking about a lot about fearing God and just having faith in his family.
All right. Hi. My name is Sundus. This is going to relate to the first question and to the educator in the back. I'm also an educator. Believe it or not, I know I'm 22. I'm a first-year teacher. I teach physics in Lower Manhattan. And I see Trayvon in my students. You were describing Trayvon, and in my head, I'm like, holy crap, those are my students that you're describing. I see myself in my students. And I've been working endlessly. I start, a few students asked me to help them start the Black Lives Matter Club in my school. We're planning a Black History Month celebration with a few roundtable discussions. And then I'm taking 10 students to the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which is amazing, but I don't think it's enough for the youth. What more can I do to make sure my kids are empowered? Because most of them are going to college next year. They're going to predominantly white institutions that they might face racism, they might face discrimination. They will. Yes, me, as a person of color, I went to one of the most diverse institutions at Rutgers University back in Jersey. And yeah, and I'm Muslim and I'm Arab and I'm a woman of color. And I have never, ever seen that much hatred towards me until I went to college. So I want to make sure my kids are empowered. So what more can I do to make sure they are empowered to kind of fight against the system that consistently wants them to fail?
One of the things that you can do is continue to do what you're doing, first of all. And you want to make them aware of what's going on. You can only teach them so much. With all the training and all the advice that Trayvon had, he was still unarmed. He was still 17 years old compared to somebody that was armed with a loaded gun at 28. You see, so sometimes they don't even have a fighting chance. So they have to know that also. They have to know that even if they had a suit on, they can still be profiled. It doesn't matter whether you have on a suit or a hoodie. It doesn't matter if you, whatever religion you are. It doesn't matter your education. It doesn't matter some of those things. You know, people prejudge because they don't know any better. And so you have to teach them about the good and the bad. You have to teach them about the good police officers and the bad ones.
Right.
You have to teach them about the good judges and the bad ones. You just have to teach so many moral things, and then you let them fly. But just continue to do what you're doing. Continue to be the ear of reasoning for them. We can continue to pray for our children, and we just want the very best for them. But it's always somebody that is on the other side that perceives them in a certain way, and we have to tell our children about them as well.
All right. Yeah, thank you all so much for coming. there's a stereotype that so many, particularly young black men who suffer gun violence, don't have dads, don't have great parents. And you have seen the living embodiment of how untrue that is. And we are grateful and honored that you've shared your story and your time with us. So one more time, put your hands together. But then, yes.
Well, we want to say,
You can close this out.
thank you, Shaun King. Thank you, Random House. But most importantly, thank you guys for coming out. Thank you for just having the book in your possession to read, to be able to talk about, to be able to share with your friends and family. We say thank you from our family to your family. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you.